I want you to stop whatever you're doing right now because what I'm about to tell you is something I have never fully shared with anyone. Not my sister, not my best friend, not even my therapist knows all of it. This is the story of how one single sentence, whispered by a doctor in a cold white office, changed the entire course of my life. He didn't say it loudly. He leaned in close, looked me straight in the eyes, and said 7 words that made my blood run cold. Keep him away from your daughter. And in that moment, everything I thought I knew about my marriage, about my husband, about the man I had shared a bed with for 11 years, all of it shattered. But let me take you back to the beginning, because you need to understand who I was before all of this happened. Because I was not some naive woman who didn't pay attention. I was sharp. I was careful. I was the kind of person who noticed things. I noticed when something felt off at work. I noticed when a friend was lying to me. I trusted my instincts almost religiously, and yet somehow, I missed what was right in front of me for years. That's the part that still keeps me up at night. My husband, I'm going to call him Marcus in this story, because even now, even after everything, I still have a daughter who carries part of his name, and I want to protect her. Marcus and I met when I was 24. He was charming in that quiet, steady way. Not flashy. Not the kind of man who walked into a room and demanded attention. He was the kind of man who sat beside you and made you feel like the most important person in the world. He listened. He remembered things. He asked thoughtful questions. My mother adored him. My friends said I'd hit the jackpot. And for a long time, I believed them. We got married 3 years after we met, had our daughter, Lily, when I was 29. And for a few years, life was genuinely good. Not perfect, no marriages, but good. We argued about money sometimes, about whose turn it was to do things around the house, about how much time he spent working. Normal stuff. Stuff that made me feel like we were just like every other couple trying to figure it out. But around the time Lily turned 5, something started to shift. And I don't mean dramatically. I mean in the smallest, most invisible ways. Marcus started forgetting things. Not big things at first. Just little things. He'd forget where he put his keys. He'd forget that I told him about a dinner we had planned. He'd start a sentence and lose it halfway through, standing there with this blank look on his face like the words had simply evaporated. I chalked it up to stress. He'd been under a lot of pressure at work. I made excuses. That's what we do, isn't it? We make excuses for the people we love. Then the moods started changing. And this is where I want to be really careful with how I describe this, because I know how it sounds, and I don't want to get ahead of myself. But Marcus started becoming someone I didn't fully recognize. Not all the time, not every day, but in flashes. He would get irritable over nothing, genuinely nothing, and then 2 hours later, act as if it never happened. He'd be warm and tender one moment, and then say something cutting and cold the next. And when I brought it up, he'd look genuinely confused, like he had no memory of the shift. I started keeping notes. I know that sounds extreme, but something in me needed to document what was happening, because I was starting to feel like I was going crazy. Like, maybe I was imagining it. I'd write down the date, what happened, what he said, and when I looked back at those notes after a few months, the pattern was undeniable. The episodes were getting more frequent, and they weren't random. They seemed to be getting worse around Lily. Now here is the part of the story where I need you to really be with me, because this is the part that makes my chest tighten every single time I think about it. I started noticing that Lily was getting quieter. My daughter, who had been this bright, loud, fearless little girl who narrated her entire life like she was the star of her own documentary. She started going quiet. Not all at once. Gradually, the way a light dims before it goes out. She stopped wanting to watch movies with her dad. She started asking to sleep in my room. Small things things that a busy parent could miss. But I saw them, and I filed them away, right there next to the notes I was keeping about Marcus. One evening, I came home from the grocery store a little earlier than expected. I walked through the front door, and I heard Lily say something in this small, careful voice. The kind of voice children use when they're trying not to make someone angry. And I heard Marcus respond, and the tone of his voice was something I had never heard from him before. It was flat, detached, cold in a way that felt completely disconnected from the Marcus I knew. I stood in the hallway with the grocery bag still in my hands, and I didn't move. Something told me not to make a sound. Not yet. I won't share every detail of what I heard because some of it is still too raw, and some of it involves my daughter in ways that are not mine to broadcast to the world. But what I will tell you is this. What I witnessed in the next few minutes was enough to make me put the grocery bags down very quietly, walk back out the front door, and sit on the porch steps for a long time before I trusted myself to go back inside. That night, after Lily was in bed, I told Marcus I was worried about him. I framed it entirely around his health. I told him I'd noticed he seemed stressed, that the forgetfulness was concerning me, that I wanted him to see a doctor. I kept my voice calm. I kept my face neutral. I had already decided what I was going to do, and I needed him to agree to go to the appointment without suspecting why I was really asking. He was surprisingly agreeable. He said he'd noticed it too. The forgetfulness, the mood swings. He seemed almost relieved that I'd brought it up, and that almost broke me, because part of me still loved him. Part of me was still hoping there was an explanation that didn't mean what I was afraid it meant. I made an appointment with his primary care doctor first. The PCP ran some tests, noted some concerns, and referred us to a neurologist, a specialist. I sat in that first neurology appointment, holding my hands in my lap and listening as Marcus described his symptoms. And I watched the doctor's face carefully the entire time. Doctors are trained to be neutral, to give nothing away, but there were a few moments, just a few, where something flickered across his expression that told me he was not hearing an ordinary case. The appointment was long. There were cognitive assessments. There were questions about family history. There was a discussion about scheduling an MRI. Marcus was cooperative and open, which somehow made the whole thing harder to sit through. At the end, the doctor said he wanted to speak with me alone for a moment. "Standard procedure," he said, to discuss care and logistics with the primary caregiver. Marcus was taken to another room to wait. And then the doctor looked at me, and he lowered his voice, and he said it. "Keep him away from your daughter." I felt the room tilt. I felt the air leave my lungs. I heard myself ask him what he meant. And he was careful. So careful. Clearly aware of the weight of what he was saying. Clearly aware of the line he was walking. He explained that what he was observing, combined with what I had described about Marcus's behavioral changes and certain answers Marcus had given during the assessment, pointed to a condition that sometimes manifests in very particular and troubling ways. He said he couldn't make a formal diagnosis yet. He said he needed the imaging results, but he said that in his professional experience, the pattern he was seeing sometimes, not always, but sometimes, involved a person losing the filters that normal brain function provides, the moral filters, the social filters, the ones that tell us what is and isn't appropriate around children. He handed me a card. He told me to call a specific number. He told me there were people I should speak to before the next appointment. And he looked at me with this expression that was somehow both clinical and deeply human at the same time. And he said, "You came here because you were paying attention. Keep paying attention." I walked out of that office and I sat in my car for 45 minutes. Marcus was waiting in the lobby. I texted him that I needed a few minutes. I sat there and I did not cry, which surprised me. I just sat there and thought about every note I had written, every quiet moment from Lily, every flat, cold tone I'd heard in that hallway. Every time I had told myself I was imagining things, I had not been imagining things. What happened next was not easy, and it was not clean, and it did not look like the revenge stories you see in movies where the wronged woman gets to deliver one perfect speech and walk away victorious. Real life doesn't work like that. Real life is logistics and lawyers and child services and neurologists and scared little girls and sleepless nights and moments where you second-guess everything you're doing, even when you know it's right. I called the number the doctor gave me that same evening after Lily was asleep. I spoke with someone who walked me through my immediate options. I reached out to a family attorney the following morning. I did not tell Marcus what the doctor had said to me. I kept my face completely steady for the next 3 weeks while I put everything in place. And if you've ever had to act normal while your entire world is disintegrating around you, you know exactly how much that takes out of a person. Here is what I want to say about those 3 weeks, because I think it matters. There were moments where I felt the most profound loneliness I have ever felt in my life. Because the person I would normally turn to in a crisis was the crisis. I couldn't call my mother and tell her, not yet. I couldn't tell my friends, because I didn't know who might say something. I was completely alone with this knowledge, this terrible, heavy knowledge, and I had to keep waking up every morning and making breakfast and packing Lily's school bag and asking Marcus how his day was. I had to perform normalcy while I dismantled our life in secret. And I am not telling you that to make myself sound heroic, because I don't feel heroic about any of it. I'm telling you because I want you to understand how much it costs to protect your child when the threat is someone you once chose to build your life with. The MRI results came in. The neurologist called me directly. He had been careful from the start to include me in the medical communications, which I now understand was intentional. The imaging confirmed what he had suspected. Marcus had a condition involving lesions in a very specific part of the frontal lobe, the area responsible for impulse control, judgment, and what the doctor described as social appropriateness regulation. It was progressive. It was real. It was, in some clinical sense, not entirely within Marcus's conscious control. And that is the part of this story that I still wrestle with, because knowing that there is a neurological explanation does not erase what I felt in that hallway. It does not undo the look on Lily's face or the quietness that had crept into her over those months. It does not make me feel less afraid. What it does is make the whole situation more complicated and more heartbreaking than a simple villain and victim story allows for. I am not going to stand here and tell you I hate Marcus. I am not going to tell you it's simple. But I am going to tell you that the moment the doctor whispered those words to me, the most important thing in the world became one thing and one thing only: keeping my daughter safe. And nothing, not my grief, not my confusion, not my complicated feelings about a man I once loved. Nothing was going to stand in the way of that. I filed for separation within the month. My attorney was exceptional. She had dealt with cases involving medical conditions and custody before, and she knew exactly how to navigate it. The neurologist provided documentation. The court appointed a guardian ad litem for Lily, someone whose entire job was to advocate for her interests. Lily began seeing a child therapist, a warm and patient woman who I credit with helping my daughter begin to find her voice again. Marcus did not fight the separation the way I expected him to. I think somewhere underneath whatever was happening in his brain, he knew. He was angry at first, then confused. Then, in a conversation we had about 6 weeks in, sitting across from each other at our kitchen table with lawyers involved and documents in front of us, he cried. And I sat there and watched him cry, and I felt grief so deep and so strange that I don't have a clean word for it, because it is a specific kind of grief. mourning a person who is still alive, mourning a marriage that is over, and mourning the version of the future you thought you were going to have. All at once. All tangled together. He now lives in a managed care facility about 40 minutes from where Lily and I live. He has supervised visits with her. Very limited, very structured, with professionals present. He is being treated. He is, from what I understand, somewhat more stable on medication, though the condition is progressive and that stability is not guaranteed to last. And Lily, my girl, my fierce and funny and increasingly loud again girl, is doing better. She is back to narrating her life at full volume. She asks hard questions sometimes the way kids do, and I answer them as honestly as I can for her age. She knows her dad is sick. She knows it's not her fault. She knows that I will always, always choose her. And I say that to her directly, often, because I want it lodged somewhere deep in her that cannot be shaken. The revenge in this story is not dramatic. It did not come in the form of a confrontation, or a perfectly delivered monologue, or a public reckoning that played out for everyone to watch. The revenge was quieter than that. The revenge was, every morning I wake up in a house where my daughter is safe. It was the look on her face the first time she laughed. Really laughed, uninhibited and loud, after months of quiet. It was watching her run toward me after school instead of walking carefully, the way she had started doing, like she was always bracing for something. The revenge was the moment I realized I had trusted myself, that when every voice in my head told me something was wrong, I did not talk myself out of it. I did not choose the comfort of denial over the discomfort of truth. I paid attention. And paying attention saved my daughter. If you are watching this right now, and something in this story is sitting heavy with you, if there is a voice in you that has been saying something is wrong and you have been drowning it out, I want you to hear this. Your instincts exist for a reason. The discomfort you feel when something isn't right is not weakness. It is not paranoia. It is your mind doing exactly what it was built to do. Listen to it, even when it's inconvenient, even when the truth is complicated and messy and doesn't fit into a neat story, even when the person at the center of it is someone you love. Because at the end of the day, the most important thing I did was not dramatic. It was just paying attention, keeping notes, and walking into a doctor's office with my eyes open. That's it. That was everything. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sitting with me through this one, because it was not easy to tell and I know it was not easy to hear. If this story reached someone who needed it today, then it was worth every word. Share it if you think someone in your life needs to hear it. Leave me a comment. I read all of them, and I will see you in the next one.